It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome in to Rico Brogna, episode number 646. This episode almost feels like a troll job by the president of the New York Mets, David Stearns. If you have listened to the more recent Rico Brogna or Evan and Tiki, you would know that I had a nice conversation with David Stearns down in Florida at spring training, and it was fun, but he wouldn't come on the air with me for whatever reason. Doesn't want to do the Rico, doesn't want to go on WFAN, which is strange because I thought our conversation was good. You know, I thought it would have been entertaining on the radio. So David is kind enough to talk to us and talk to me, but not on the radio. So what does David Stearns do less than 24 hours after me and him have a nice discussion? He decides to rub it in and say, all right, Evan, I ain't going to go on your show. I'm not going to go on the Rico, but I'll hold a press conference. And I did tell him that one of the things we do on the Rico is we listen to every word he says. So this is another example of that. David Stearns did his middle of spring training press conference, and we will react to all of the answers that David gave. So it's not quite him joining the Rico Brogna. It's not quite him as a guest on Evan and Tiki, but at least we can give you instant analysis to what David Stearns has to say. I give David this. He will frequently do these gaggles, these press conferences. He does it during the season, usually right at the beginning of a homestand, kind of the state of the team, whether things are going bad or things are going good. So I do like that. It's certainly an upgrade over Leon Rose, who never speaks to the media and subsequently the fans. It's not really about talking to the media. It's about talking to us. So if you missed David Stearns' middle of spring training press conference, no big deal. Keep it right here. You'll hear everything he said. And in the midst of it, you'll at least hear my analysis on what he said. So let's kick it off with question number one for the president of the New York Mets, David Stearns.
Leave opening day out of it. How confident are you that he's going to be an impactful player for you in 2026?
Well, I expect him to contribute to our team this year. There's no question about that. I think the way he has developed throughout his professional career indicates that he's reaching that level. Whether that's an opening day or not, I don't know.
Well, here's what's fun. Who the hell is he talking about? I guess this is the problem sometimes with cutting David Stearns questions. I would assume he's talking about Carson Benj, that he will be impacting this team at some point, but maybe not on opening day. I have continued to say this here on the Rico Brogna. I said this to Carlos Mendoza when he joined us. I fully expect that Carson Benj is going to be on the opening day roster. He had another impressive performance on Monday night, a game that was televised, had a triple, had a base hit to left field. He did it sometimes behind in the count. So I think it will be opening day that we'll see Carson Benj contributing to the New York Mets.
What are your first impressions of how Bo Bichette and Jorge Polanco are adapting to their new roles?
I think this is going pretty much as expected. They've both worked extremely hard at those positions. There are nuances that they're learning. They're going to continue to learn, and it's not going to be perfect, but I'm certainly pleased with the actions they're showing, what we're seeing in their daily work, and I think we're progressing well.
Obviously, we're not watching the daily work. We can watch the games that are televised and see, hey, how do they look defensively? I'll start with Jorge Polanco. I think it's really just there's nothing to see. He's barely played first base. We've only seen him, I think, 2 or 3 times officially in a game, and he hasn't really been tested. Nothing has jumped out at me. So unfortunately, I think it's an incomplete on Jorge Polanco. With Bo Bichette, there's been some ups and downs. I mean, we've all seen some of the miscues. We've also seen him make some routine plays, which is nice to see. He made that really good bare hand play a couple of weeks ago, even though it was, I guess, towards the shortstop hole. So you could say it was a shortstop play. But I think when it comes to the guys learning new positions, and this is one of the challenges of spring training, how much are we really seeing of each guy? In Polanco, it has been very little. In Bichette, we've seen him plenty, and I think that it's been your normal ups and downs. It's going to be an adjustment for Bo Bichette. And I think if we're going to be fair, and right now in the middle of March, it's easier to be fair than the middle of April when we're emotional about wins and losses. I think we need to give Bo Bichette a good 2 or 3 months. There are going to be downs. He's learning a new position. I think, though, in fairness to him, if he makes a big error on opening day, that doesn't mean he's going to suck at third base. That doesn't mean this is Bobby Bonilla reincarnated. We need to have some level of patience. I raise my hand and tell you I'm going to try to be patient. I know that once the games start, we all get emotional, we all get pissy, we all get excited, we over-exaggerate. But here in the middle of March, with a few more weeks left before opening day, I think especially when it comes to Bo Bichette, we need to be patient. The difference between Bo Bichette and Jorge Polanco is Bo Bichette's the third baseman. He's going to do it every single day, and it would take something major for him to not be the third baseman. There are other options at first base. And as we've talked about a lot, there's also the possibility that Polanco ends up DHing more than play first base. So I think both of those guys, a little bit different.
Just what specific signs have you seen from Benj that tell you he's ready to make the opening day roster?
I don't think we've made that decision yet. I think Carson is having a nice camp. Similar to all of our guys, he's worked really hard. I think we've had a very work-intensive camp across the field, and Carson has participated in that. In the games, we've seen what we would have expected. He's taken very competitive at bats. He's a tough out. I think he's played a nice right field. So he's done what we would expect him to do. We think he's going to be a really good player, and we'll have a difficult decision as we get towards the end of camp.
I don't really think it is a difficult decision, and I love that leading question. That's something I would do, basically trying to get him to confirm that Carson Benj is going to make this team. They both said that it's not going to be stat-based. Like, you're not just going to be able to look at the stats and say he made the team. I've watched a lot of Carson Benj. I think we all have. He's played incredibly well. He's had impressive moments. He's had impressive at-bats. He's looked good in the outfield. We even saw him in center field the other day. But if you do want to look at numbers, and it's a small sample size, and it can change very quickly because it's not a lot of at-bats, not a lot of plate appearances, Carson Benj has the most at-bats of anybody in camp. That isn't a surprise. I think if you paid attention, he's played the most. He's had 23 at-bats. He's 9 for 23. That's a .391 batting average. He's walked one time, so not a lot of walks, a .440 on-base percentage. He's hit no home runs, 4 RBIs, a triple. That doesn't include, I guess, some of the at-bats that they may have had in the exhibition games for the World Baseball Classic. Those stats don't count. But overall, he's had a really good camp. I mean, the numbers are the numbers. I know that can change, and they said it's not going to be about numbers. But if they were truly giving Benj a chance to win an outfield job, and I believe they were, then he's going to make the team. I think that's pretty obvious. It would be very strange if he didn't make the team. I would be curious what the explanation would be. I know we still have a few more weeks, and he can certainly go into an 0 for 12 slump and strike out 9 times. I certainly know that's possible. But in this moment, he's going to make the team. And if he doesn't, I really don't know what David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza would say, because I believe them. I think most of us believe them that they were giving him a shot. I mean, David Stearns brought up Carson Benj making the team back in November. Like, he's got a real chance to be on the opening day roster. And considering the camp he's had, I don't think he's done anything to change that.
Broadly speaking, this is a kind of a fertile time for extensions the next couple of weeks across the industry. Do you sense, whether for you guys or anyone else, that there's that labor uncertainty plays into teams' willingness to do extensions this year versus others?
Broadly speaking, haven't really given that much thought and don't get a sense much from around the industry as to how teams are thinking about that.
These guys don't want to touch questions related to the CBA. So once that question is framed with, is the CBA uncertainty going to lead to less extensions, David Stearns is going to shut down. Now, one thing about David is he's not going to give you a much, even when I was talking to him, because it just popped into my head something else that we talked about that I don't have any problem saying, because I can't imagine why it would be off the record, but I confronted, maybe not the right word, I debated him about giving a pitcher a long-term contract. Obviously something we've talked about, and I kind of laid it out the way I do here on the Rico, saying, hey, David, you offered it to Yamamoto, no doubt about it, but other than that, there's no track record of you giving pitchers long-term contracts. And he said something without giving in. He says, well, there have been others. And I said, who? And he would not tell me. So that's why I feel good that the conversation is easily repeatable, because he's very good at not telling you the inside information. So it got my brain like speculating, okay. And by the way, it doesn't mean it's true. He could just be throwing us off the trail. Oh, yeah, that was someone else we offered a long-term deal to. And you could play semantics on that. What's a long-term deal? They offered Sean Manaea and got Sean Manaea on a 3-year deal. Does he view that as a long-term deal? But he said something very interesting. He said, I hope to be here for a long time. I'm paraphrasing. I'm pretty sure at some point you will see us make a long-term offer to a pitcher. And so then, of course, it leads to who will that be? So Freddie Peralta is obviously the guy on our mind. And I think when that question's asked about an extension, that's who we're thinking about, unless you want to lock up a young player long-term. And I don't know if Freddie Peralta is that guy. I like Freddie. I'm excited about what he's going to do this season. And obviously, considering what they gave up, I'd like to have him on this team for a good period of time. But is he the guy you go 7 or 8 years with? I don't know. It doesn't jump out at me as that being the guy. I mean, Tarek Skubal does, obviously, and he's clearly going to get to free agency. We've seen how he's prioritized it over even pitching in the World Baseball Classic. But I think once you ask David Stearns and really any executive a question and it's related to the unrest of the CBA or a lockout, you could tell they do not want to touch it, nor do they want to answer it.
What you saw last year, I mean, you had some guys who just kind of ran out of steam at the end and who had been really good up until that point. How do you get them through the finish line?
So last year we had the combination of injuries mid-year and then absolutely fatigue set in for certain guys at the end. I think part of that is experience. Once you've gone through that fatigue, it may help you both physically and mentally battle it in the future. Some of it is we're constantly learning about how to train year round and whether there are things we can do in November, December, January that end up helping us in September and October. And that's probably an area where as an industry, we continue to grow and get better.
When I think of guys wearing down last year, if anyone jumps out, it would probably be David Peterson, because you're talking about a guy that was an all-star. You know, he was on pitching on an all-star level, and then all of a sudden just fell off and had that awful, I don't even want to say 2 months. It was more like a 6-week stretch. And one of the things that could have contributed to it, and David kind of alluded to it, is the jump in innings. You know, if you recall, David Peterson in 2024 missed the first few months of the season. He comes back, I think it was late May, early June. He ends up making 21 starts, and he's great. Obviously contributes big time out of the bullpen for the Mets in their postseason run. He threw 121 innings, which was a career high. Wasn't that much more than a year earlier when he threw 111 innings, and the year before that, 105 innings. So kind of a normal jump in innings, right? This past season, he's on the team right away, and he's making starts every 6 days, and he ends up throwing 168 innings. So he jumps 40-plus innings from the previous year, and we see the decline. You know, we see how much he fell off. Is that just, as David Stearns alluded to, just him getting used to the fact that he had a big jump in workload and that this season he should be fine because he's coming off a year in which he threw 168 innings? I hope so, because I don't think David Peterson in a lot of ways gets enough credit for how well he pitched last season. He was a big contributor to the collapse, no doubt about it, and his final ERA at 4.22 is kind of crazy when you think about how well he was pitching in the middle of the season. I mean, the year earlier, he pitched to a high 2 ERA, and if you go back, he had an ERA of sub-3, of 2.98 going into the middle of August. Think about that for a second. A sub-3 ERA into the middle of August, and if you count how many innings he was at before the collapse began, and obviously he was awful, his ERA got ruined and certainly contributed to the Mets not making the postseason, he was probably at the innings number that he was at in the previous season. So do you manage his innings differently this year? Do you handle him with maybe more care? Or do you say, you know what? He threw 160 innings. He should be fine this year to go 160, 170 innings without falling off. We shall see.
You brought in Peralta this year. You have a lot of good, starting pitchers on that roster. But how hard has it become to figure out how you're going to fill those innings over your career in baseball? Because it feels like, a lot of guys are just not built for 180 even. They might be built for 130 or 160. And how do you make the math work?
Numbers. And look, we know we need depth, and we are very cognizant of that. I think the best way to build depth is to have a farm system that continuously replenishes your pitching with young pitchers who have the ability to contribute at the major league level. And I think we are approaching that level here. We're very pleased with some of the steps that our pitching development has taken. and some of the pitchers who have come out of that over the past couple of years and who we expect to come out of it in the future. But you're right. It's tough. It's very few guys are hitting that 180 mark year in and year out. I think there are a lot of reasons for that, that probably extend beyond this specific question in press conference, but I think there are a lot of reasons for that. And the way we combat that is to try to make sure we have sufficient depth throughout the year.
I'll give you some math, and I'm sure David Stearns has done this math that can help combat that. A 6-man rotation, if they chose to do that. Not necessarily with the 6 guys they have now. We've talked about the tag team effort, potentially, of Sean Manaea and Kodai Senga. But let's do the math. There are 162 games in a season. If you have 6 starting pitchers, and I know there'll be injuries and it'll never just be 6 guys, but let's just say it is to play the math game. 162 divided by 6 is 27. That means you're asking your starting pitchers to start 27 games if they were in a 6-man rotation. Let's say they pitch 5 innings, which is realistic. I mean, that's probably the number. 27 times 5 is 135. That's 135 innings. That ain't a high number. So to combat this is obviously depth. You're always going to need depth because you never know how many starting pitchers are going to get hurt, need to go on the IL, miss a start here and there, or miss a chunk of time. But if you ask guys to only make starts every 6 or 7 days based on having a 6-man rotation, you're asking them to make 27 starts. And if they go 5 innings, it's 135 innings, which is a very low and reasonable number. So that's how you do the math on that. And you go ways back, 25, 27 years ago. I remember Bobby Valentine having a 6-man rotation. Brian Bohannon. Remember Brian Bohannon, a chunky lefty who actually hit pretty well? He was that 6th guy that Bobby Valentine inserted. And I remember thinking back then, like, kind of makes sense to have a 6-man rotation. So it does make sense. I think it always depends on who you have in your rotation. Like if you have an ace who's capable of starting every 5 days, who's the exception to that rule and can go 190 innings, a Logan Webb, if you will, then you wouldn't subjugate him to a 6-man rotation where he only makes 27 starts. It would feel like you're wasting him. But if you have a lot of guys that kind of fit that new bill, like we talked about with David Peterson, there's your math. It's kind of simple. 6-man rotation, you go 5.5 innings. Look at the amount of innings you're actually throwing over the course of a full season. Here's more from David Stearns.
You remain as optimistic as previously about Lindor being ready for opening day?
Yes. All indications we have is this is going as planned, and we would expect we have a similar level of optimism that he'll be ready for opening day.
How many, will he be able to play in any spring training games, you think, before?
Sure, yeah. That would be a prerequisite. We wouldn't have his first competition be opening day. We would ensure they're at bats.
Do you think like in the Grapefruit League, or would it be maybe minor league or games?
I would expect Grapefruit League, but we haven't mapped this out yet.
They haven't mapped it out yet. He needs to play in the Grapefruit League. He needs to play some spring training games. Well, there ain't much time, but he's confident. But he's telling us, don't worry, he'll be there for opening day. Opening day is 2 weeks from Thursday. We are doing this Rico Brogna if you're consuming it live or day of on Tuesday. So we are 2 weeks and a couple of days away from opening day. So figure within the next week and a half, we're going to have to see Lindor get some at-bats. But hey, they have been consistent about this. They're optimistic that Lindor is going to be ready for opening day, which is great because the last thing I want to see is Vidal Brujan as the Mets opening day shortstop.
Not about any player specifically, but when a prospect comes up, is it different to debut on opening day versus a normal day in the season? Are the expectations any different or anything like that?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think opening day is always different, and as much as I and we try to impart on players that opening day is just one day, we also recognize, and I recognize, that there's a significance to that, and players place a significance on that, and we're sensitive to that. Whether that creates more pressure, that I don't know, but I do know there's a level of importance to being on the line on opening day that exists to players.
I'll give you an answer on that. I think there's actually less pressure to make your major league debut on opening day because it's sort of a part of a lot of different big things. You know, when the season starts, there's so much there. There's Freddie Peralta making his Met debut. There's Juan Soto in year number 2. There's the debut of Bo Bichette. There's whoever's playing first base. And, of course, the Mets' history of opening day and the pageantry of opening day. And so Carson Benj making his major league debut is under far less scrutiny than when it happens on May 10th. Because when it happens on May 10th, that's the story. That's the event when a kid makes their major league debut. So to me, that's an easy answer. I think there's actually less pressure on Carson Benj or really any other player when they make their major league debut on opening day, because there's a million other things happening. Now, for the player itself, I totally get why you want that. That's got to be cool and special. Your debut is on opening day. But in terms of the media scrutiny, or even like us, think about it. If Carson Benj is making his major league debut in a random regular season game, that's all we're going to talk about. That's all the SNY broadcast is going to talk about. The fans are paying full attention to it. You are the center of the universe because it's 162 games and something special is potentially happening that day. When it's opening day, there's a million things. I just went through them. I mean, all the guys making debuts, the Mets winning or losing on opening day. Juan Soto is always like a big lightning rod. So I think there's less pressure for Benj if he makes his major league debut on opening day.
You look, with the potential of Benj and adding Robert, I mean, do you look at your outfield defense as something that can be really elite this year?
We expect to be a good defensive club across the diamond, and I certainly think in the outfield we have a chance to be much improved from last year.
Is it just the raw athleticism that you brought in, and obviously bringing in Kai Correa too to help with that? Is it just to make
probably a combination of all the above? It's I think we have some very talented defenders on the team. Tyrone Taylor, who we haven't talked about yet, is also a really talented defender. We're going to have talented defenders in AAA who at points are going to come up and help our major league team. And I think everyone in our clubhouse knows we're emphasizing defense, and it's important, and we expect a similar level of work there to what we're putting in on the offensive side of the ball.
Mets outfield defense should be significantly better. I think Juan Soto playing left field is an upgrade for him. I forgot. I don't remember if this was during the Mendy interview or it was off after we had stopped recording, but I said to him, why didn't you move Soto last year? Was it because of Brandon Nimmo's noodle arm? And I think he laughed. I didn't want to insult Brandon Nimmo, but I do know that that's probably a big part, as much as they won't admit this, on why Soto wasn't moved to left field last year, because it just makes more sense for Soto to play left. I don't think he's going to become a Gold Glover in left field. I'm certainly not suggesting that, but I think he's better in left field. I just think he's a better left fielder than he was a right fielder. So, look, we know the deal with him. He's average at best defensively, but in center field and right field, they should be really good. Even on the days where Robert Jr. doesn't play, because as David Stearns mentioned, Tyrone Taylor's a good defender. Carson Benj, got to see more of him, but he certainly looks like a good defender and has a really good arm. So no doubt the Met outfield defense should be significantly better than what it was last season.
Just what stood out to you this spring about the clubhouse culture?
I think guys are getting after it, and that's been good to see. We have a very focused group in there. As I mentioned earlier, the work has been really quality on the field, and that's something you don't see every spring. I think we have a group that is actively trying to get better every single day, and that can be somewhat unique with a team full of veterans. That's not often the case. A lot of times you come to spring training with a veteran team and everyone's really just got opening day circled and is counting down the days to opening day. And I think what we felt here is guys are taking every single day seriously. They're going out, they're getting their work in. They're working very well with our coaching staff, and it's been really good to see.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but keep this in mind when David Stearns makes that comment about everyone's working so hard, they just don't have opening day circled. Literally every guy you brought in is switching positions. So they are doing something different than your normal, all right, I'm here, I'm in shape, let's go. You're asking a veteran in Jorge Polanco to learn first base. You're asking a veteran in Bo Bichette to learn third base. So I would hope they're working their ass off trying to get better every day. They're learning a new position. Luis Robert Jr.'s case, apparently he's learning how to stay healthy. That's his trick this season. We still haven't seen him in a spring training game. So I don't mean to, take that answer and be like, that's BS. But in fairness to the veterans on this roster, even Juan Soto, who's not in camp right now because he's competing in the World Baseball Classic, basically all your veterans are learning new positions. And then your other veteran in Lindor is trying to get healthy again. So it's different, I would say. It's very, very different. Oh, speaking of the Clubhouse stuff, if you guys remember, Mendy was on with Carton and Big Mac a couple weeks ago, and they brought up the whole politics stuff, like, was politics an issue in the locker room? And Carlos laughed and was like, I've never heard that. And you could have interpreted that many ways. Was he lying? Was he this? Was he that? We asked him about that because I told Carlos, I said, look, I rip you plenty, but the one thing I've been adamant about, and I get crap for it, is this Clubhouse thing is completely overblown. You guys sucked in the last 2 months of the year. That's why you lost. And he laughed because it's true. And he said, I got to tell you, I had never heard that politic thing. So he said that to me and Hoff as well, that he had just never heard that. So take it for what it's worth. I mean, I love Mike and I trust him. So I'm not saying he didn't hear that, because I'm sure that there's been a lot of talk about what happened in the locker room. But the manager himself is telling you he's just never heard stuff like that. So take it for what it's worth. He said that to Craig and Big Mac when he was on the air, reiterated that to us when we were talking about it. It's just not something he had heard about. So there you go. All right, a few more for David Stearns.
And just broadly speaking, what are some of the questions you're trying to answer before camp breaks going into the season?
Yeah, I think we have the right field question that we're going to have to answer. There's probably a bench question we're going to have to answer, and then one or two bullpen spots that we're going to have to answer. But for the most part, this is about getting our team and individual players ready for the season. I think we're doing that. I think our coaching staff has done a really nice job of making sure this is a well-run, efficient camp, and we've done that so far. And it's been good for me to see.
Yeah, guys are mostly healthy. Let me knock on wood. I have wood in front of me. I mean, we have not had an injury-prone camp. Now, hopefully we don't get a rash of injuries in the final 2 weeks, but the pitching is healthy, which is sort of surprising. Again, I'm knocking on wood. Do not blame me. But yeah, the final few bullpen spots will certainly be interesting. And right field, though I have been convinced for a while, and certainly the performance continues to back this up, that the right field question has been answered. What I hope, and I'm not sure of, is how you fill out the rest of the outfield. I am very big on both Benj and Tauchman making this team. I don't see any reason why both guys should not be on the major league roster. Tauchman has hit lefties his entire career, so the idea that they're both lefties, who cares? I mean, honestly, that doesn't matter. I get the appeal of Christian Pache because of his defense. He's a right-handed bat, blah, blah, blah. Mike Tauchman's a major leaguer, and I think he makes the roster and the team better if he's on the roster.
We're looking at free agent bullpen help in the offseason. What was appealing the most about Weaver to you?
There are a couple things. I think the experience of pitching in multiple roles. He's pitched at the back end of games. He's pitched multiple innings. He's thrived in both. His willingness to take the ball. That's an important part of his role on a team, and also platoon neutrality, someone who we don't feel like we necessarily have to match up against a certain handed hitter. He has the weapons and the pitches to get really all types of hitters out.
And just, his second half numbers weren't as good as his first half numbers last year. Do you just look at that as a sample size thing, or?
With relievers, there's always a sample size thing in there, and we have to be careful about that on both ends. I think sometimes we point to sample size when the surface line numbers aren't great, but we conveniently forget the sample size when the surface line numbers are great. So there's always the sample size part. I think with Luke, there's probably also some things that he recognizes, and we recognize that he can get back to and do a little bit better, and we're very confident he can.
Tipping his pitches. I don't know why they won't say that, but I think that was a contributing factor to what happened in the second half with the New York Yankees. I love, and this is not just David Stearns, how we use new terms to describe old things. Neutral, was it a split neutrality? Something neutrality. Basically to say he gets righties and lefties out. And it doesn't matter if it's a lefty or righty. Then we talk about it doesn't matter the handedness. Like, I get it. It's all saying the same thing, but it's just some of the new ways of describing things that we've talked about for a million years just It makes me chuckle. I'm not angry about it. It just makes me laugh. Position neutrality, is that what it was? Or statistical neutrality? Bottom line is Luke Weaver gets lefties and righties out. That's the bottom line. And the other appealing thing about Weaver, and I'm curious how Mendy will use him in this regard, is he can pitch multiple innings. He's a guy who can come in and get 4 or 5 outs. And I like that. I think that's a positive. So, he forgot to mention he's a former Yankee. That was the other thing that was appealing. I'm just kidding. All right. I think we've got one more after this or 2 more for David Stearns. I'm not sure. Let's hear from David.
Outside of Benj, what have you seen from some of the other younger guys, whether it be an A.J. Ewing, a Jack Leninger, and tying into that, has their progression over the course of the spring been in line with what you've expected from those guys?
And Andy Green actually and I were talking about this earlier today, how well our younger players have fit in our major league camp, not only in terms of the competitiveness on the field, but how they've adjusted within our major league clubhouse, how they've worked with our veterans. It's been really encouraging to see. And if we're doing our jobs well, we should have this every single year. We should have good young players in major league camp every single year. And we have it. It's been good to see. I really think all of those guys have performed well in camp, have handled themselves well, have handled themselves with maturity. And it speaks well to where they're headed.
That has been an exciting part of spring training, seeing a lot of the younger players that we've read about or heard about actually play. A.J. Ewing is one of the guys that certainly jumps out at me, though we saw poor A.J., try to make a leaping catch in left field the other day and crash against the wall. But we've seen a lot of really good, intriguing young players that hopefully is going to help this team down the road. We make a big deal about signing free agents. We make a big deal about keeping our stars or making big trades. But the reality is developing a farm system is so important. And having guys come up every single year that can contribute to this team, it's incredibly important. And if this is going to be the franchise we dream of, a team that's good and competitive every year, and dare I say eventually wins a world championship, you need stuff like that. And it's not just them contributing. It is also, in fairness, being able to take the depth that you have and trade for good players. And I think the Freddie Peralta trade is an example of that, as much as I felt it was too much. And, at first I was disappointed with how much was given up. The one thing I acknowledged from the beginning, and I certainly acknowledge now, is that the Mets are in position to trade a lot of stuff because they got a lot of good young players. And that is something the Dodgers have done so well of doing the last couple of years. We make a big deal out of the free agents, and they are big deals. Don't get me wrong. We want that too, and that's important. But developing young players, also very important. So there you go. That's David Stearns meeting the media and talking to us fans just 2.5 weeks away from opening day. I still dream that one day David will surprise us and join us here on the Rico Brogna. We got a lot of Ricos coming up throughout the next couple of weeks as we lead up to opening day. We're going to do a mailbag in a couple of days. So questions and comments on what you've seen in spring training, your opinion on the roster, you can send it on over and email us, thericob@gmail.com. We picked our entrance for the Rico Brogna Fantasy League. And you know what? We will do the draft live on the Rico. Here's the way I look at the podcast world. If you're not interested, then don't listen to that episode. It's as simple as that. We appreciate those that battled through our Das Beer Garden episode. We know the audio quality wasn't great. Sorry about that. If you didn't like it, don't listen to it. What was cool about that episode, even though the quality of the audio may not have been great, is all the people that showed up. And I hope that everyone who did show up had a good time. It was a lot of fun meeting you guys, especially coming up on stage, talking Met baseball. But we'll get better. The next time we go back to Das Beer Garden, we're going to air check it. We're going to make sure it's sounding beautiful. But for that fantasy draft, we'll do a live Rico. If you're interested, maybe you can learn for your fantasy league what not to do based on the mistakes we make. Maybe it'll be educational. So we'll have that coming up all in the next couple of weeks. But again, mailbag edition in a few days. You can email us, thericob@gmail.com. Remember to subscribe to the Rico Brogna so you never miss an episode. And, of course, make sure you're locked in on the WFN YouTube channel. A lot of stuff from the radio station. And, of course, every Rico Brogna you can consume live. Thank you very much for checking out another edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.